All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the LoudMouth MMA podcast. Today, friend of the show, Justin Ledet, is back on to talk about his fight that he's had planned for a while, although the opponent has changed last minute here. The man goes by Azu, and that's the only thing I'm going to call him this whole episode because I do not know how to pronounce his name. And, yeah, Justin, how's it going?
It's going good, man.
It's nice to talk to you again, man.
Oh, for sure.
So when did you find out about this fight in particular? I mean, obviously you've been planning to fight in Pittsburgh for quite some time, but this fight just and what happened to Dimitri? Do you have any idea?
Nah, I don't even know. They called me. They called me as I was walking onto the plane or boarding the plane and said he dropped out. And I said, "Well, I'm coming to Pittsburgh to fight, so
I'm on my way.
I better find me somebody because I'm getting paid, you know. I trained all this time. I deserve to get paid. You know, that's bullcorn. So,
and so yeah, when did this opponent get booked then officially? Was it in the last day or two?
Pretty much as far as I know, like within the last couple of days. I signed the contract barely today because they had to write it up and fax it over or some crap or something like that. But according to like him and his people, he's known about it for like he took the fight on 7 days notice is what they're saying, so it's whatever, you know.
Have you gotten a chance to I mean we were talking off air a little bit. I mean, obviously you've done some type of research. I mean, what have you been able to kind of learn about him over the last couple days?
Nah, I really don't research too much. That was really my trainers. They like to worry a lot, some shit, I don't know. But,
they like to prepare.
Yeah, they like to prepare. I don't like that. I don't like to prepare because, you know, plans, they always fall through. And, you know, once the plans fall through, you kind of lost, you know. So I don't make any plans. But they did a little research on them. And to me, it's pretty much like any other heavyweight that we fight. They're going to be bigger. They're going to be slower. They're going to be less skilled. So we got to go in there. We got to stick to what we do best, and that's being a skilled fighter, you know, being quick on our feet, being quick with our punches, being precise with our punches, and also countering and, you know, doing what a skilled boxer should do, and that's what I'm coming to display.
Okay. See, yeah, I was wondering, I mean, you know, obviously the big advantage to you being in heavyweight is your speed and also your gas tank. Huge. Now, he just had a fight, you know, I don't know if you consider that a UFC debut or not. I guess it is. You know, he made his debut on the Contender Series. So, you know, that's going to be a whole interesting wrinkle. You know, you got a bunch of new fighters coming in. You know, this is one of the first guys to be off that Contender Series to come into the octagon. So there's going to be a little bit of hype there, as I'm sure you're aware. But if anything, I mean, that helps you, right? I mean, anything to get more people watching something. But, yeah, I mean, I think some of these guys are going to be overhyped. I was just looking through his record. I don't know a lot about this guy, but I was just looking through his record. He obviously seems like a knockout guy. That seems like what he's going for. You know, his only submission was very early in his career. It might even have been an amateur fight, to be honest with you. I can't remember. But he's a guy who looks like he's going to chase a knockout. I mean, you're going in there with that expectation, I assume, that he's going to be moving forward?
I don't know. I don't really go into fights expecting too much out of people. I just kind of see what they do. I feel like because, you know, he probably didn't get a full training camp because you know, me outside of you know, fight training camp, I still train like I'm in a fight training camp. So, you know, people are always telling me, you know, when does training camp begin? Like, shit, when did it ever end for me? That's what I'm thinking. So I stay in shape year round, you know, it's a year round sport. So I don't know how good a shape he's in, but, you know, we're going to see once we get in there. But, you know, most heavyweights, they're going to try to come out strong, you know, because they can't last those 3 rounds. So they try to push the pace, you know, at first. So we'll see. Like I said, we're coming in there and we're coming to adapt to his style, and we know we'll do good, and we're going to stick with that.
Yeah. Is there any other fight? I mean, this is a cool card. I'm not necessarily like super stoked on Rockhold Branch. I understand why it's happening, but it's not my favorite fight in the world. But the rest of the card, I love the prelims. To be honest with you, I was looking at the prelims earlier. I really love, you know, Luke Sanders getting back in there. I'm a big Tony Martin fan. I'm a big fan of yours. I'm a big fan of Usman. I mean, is there Gregor Gillespie's on this card? I don't know if you got to see that cat fight in his last fight, but he's awesome. Is there any fight in particular on this card that you're kind of looking forward to?
The Triple G Canelo.
That's the one.
That's the one, man.
Of course,
I'm always getting scheduled.
I knew it. I knew it.
Matches,
why did I not? Why did I not assume that? I even thought about including. Okay, we could talk. I'm not a boxing fan, but we can most certainly talk about that fight for just a moment. My buddy. So I'm LoudMouth MMA, of course, but my buddy Blake, he runs LoudMouth Boxing.
Yeah, we've talked before. Yeah, he's cool.
And he is all in on Triple G. Do you concur?
I mean, I really in fights this close, I have my opinions, but for the most part, I just like to see two guys get in there and do damage to one another.
Yeah.
I think the big mistake that people are always going to say about Triple G is he ain't fought nobody, and that's not really the case. He ain't fought nobody that you know of.
Sure.
Don't mean that they ain't good. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
He's got a lot of people on his record. Mark Murray, who's a beast, has already moved up to 168 and has done big things there. Curtis Steven, David Lemieux, and you got – so Triple G is already on that level where he's fighting top-notch 160-pounders. This is actually going to be the first 160-pounder that Canelo will fight at 160. So that's the difference between the two, and just that alone on paper, you got to give the advantage to Triple G. Canelo's never been hit by a hard hitting 160 pounder.
Yeah.
Nor has he even been hit by a strong 154 pounder. But I don't think there's too many stronger 154 pounders than him because he cuts from like 185. But that's Canelo weight.
Yeah. Yeah. See, I mean, at least for this fight, I know because, like I said, I'm really not a huge boxing guy. I find I watched. I mean, you're the wrong person to be saying this to, so hopefully this doesn't ruin our relationship. But I had probably watched 2 or 3 fights before the McGregor fight. So obviously that I got that fight piqued my interest. Right? It's an interesting little sideshow. I love it. I was all about it. So because of that, I watched all of the prelims and I watched all of the main card. It's the most boxing I've ever seen in my entire life, combined times 10. I watched every single fight. And I am very sad to report that, man, I'm just not a fan. Just not a fan. It just doesn't do it for me.
Nah, and that's the thing that I tell people, boxing is not, boxing is like a fine wine. You know what I'm saying? You develop a taste for it over time. Nobody who drinks wine the first time when they're, 15, 16, they're going to be like, oh, man, wine's my shit. You start getting older and stuff, and you start developing a taste for it. And that's how boxing is, and people who don't understand it, they don't really get it because, I think that's why people don't have as much knowledge about it because you have to study it, just like any other sport, just like any other, thing in life. You got to study it. And really, I found no satisfaction from that McGregor-Mayweather fight. There was no satisfaction.
Sure. The only satisfaction for me was I am perfectly fine with I enjoy going to the fair. And that's kind of how that fight felt to me. It was it's like you're going to the fair. You're that was really all it was. It was this little sideshow. Again, not a boxing fan, but I bet on Mayweather. I got ridiculous lines. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I'll try. I believe I got him straight up at minus 375, and then I parlayed that with I can't remember, but it was something in college football, but I don't remember what it was. But it gave me plus odds when I parlayed it. And then I got him by TKO at minus 115. It was basically even odds, which is nuts. And then I also bet the over 9 rounds. So that's what the over was set at 9. Like I didn't choose 9. It was just that's where the over was. It was over 9 or under 9. So I went over 9. So I got all 3 things right. So I was all in. I mean,
that's a great way to cash out right there.
Yeah, and it was really simple, and it wasn't the lines. The fight was so ridiculous, and I'm huge in MMA. Obviously, this is the only thing I do, pretty much. I mean, outside of my real life, in my fake life, this is the only thing I do. This and fantasy football. So yeah, it's like, for me to be able to go all in on Mayweather like that, I don't understand why other people in MMA couldn't see that. How could you not see what was happening here? I wanted McGregor to win. By God, listen, I wanted the man to win. I would have gladly lost money if he would have won, because that would have just been such a cool little thing to have happen. But yeah, I mean, it was easy to see from a mile away. I don't know how people were not able to see it.
Well, I wasn't even mad about that. It was kind of like the uneducation of the fans.
Sure, I was one of those guys, because I complained incessantly.
More so after the fight.
Yeah.
And it was like they were making excuses for this man. Like, when in the fight game do y'all make excuses for people?
Sure.
And it's like only when Conor McGregor fights. And I'm like, man, but if another fighter does that, y'all gonna rag him and say he's trash and this, that, and the third. It's like, okay, like they're gonna say, oh man, they stopped the fight too early. Skip Bayless gonna say, oh, well, he would have came back and won that fight. He'll win a rematch. Like, are you serious? Like,
Skip Bayless. We cuss, right? You normally cuss on here, so I can go ahead and cuss. Skip Bayless is a fucking moron. He is an absolute moron, and I don't think it's fake. I don't think he's doing it for ratings. I don't think he's doing it to make headlines. I literally just think the guy's a moron, and he just, like, this is what he does. He like, I have so much more respect for a guy like Howard, who sure, he's also wrong a lot, but whatever. He at least will admit it. So Skip Bayless. Although, now, to go to the other side here, I didn't hear Max Kellerman come out and, Max Kellerman was just as wrong as Skip Bayless. Literally. If you take the amalgamation of how wrong Max Kellerman was and how wrong Skip Bayless was, although they're on the opposite ends, they were both incredibly wrong. And I never heard Max Kellerman come out and be like, oh yeah, I was wrong. I haven't heard that yet. And he was extremely wrong.
I don't think he was wrong for what he said. I think he was wrong because Mayweather chose a different style for the fight. If Mayweather would fight how he fought against Pacquiao, how he fought against, whoever, McGregor would not have landed a punch.
You think so? Even if he'd have leaned in? I think if he'd have leaned in and gone for it. I think
he would have landed a punch, don't get me wrong, but like nothing, even with the style that Mayweather chose, McGregor didn't land anything significant. Like, everybody wanted to point out that uppercut in the second round, but it's like, that was a glancing blow to a guy that has a 40-year-old chin, and you're 20 pounds heavier. Like, and then like everybody, Dana White was talking about how hard like McGregor punches and this and that. Like, yeah, he might punch hard for MMA, but when it comes to boxers, we get hit hard every day. We get hit hard 30 times a round. It's a lot different type of you getting hit hard in boxing than it is in MMA. And that's where I was just like, and then you had people online talking about, about him landing more shots than Manny Pacquiao, stuff like that. Which
Pacquiao didn't get finished.
Yeah, and then, Pacquiao didn't land 32 hammer fists. But he should have got deducted points for that, but nobody wants to point out that. Like I said, they're all just making excuses for him and stuff. So it's
I'll say, to be fair, right, guys like Robin Black, before this happened, he kept talking about how Conor McGregor was going to change the face of boxing. Right, he was going to change the face of boxing, and that he was going to bring in a whole bunch of new things into boxing, again, just completely changing the game. And some people lined up on that bandwagon as well. And of course, as soon as the fight ended, Robin Black got lambasted, and which I don't think is fair, because in all fairness, Conor McGregor changed the game. How many times have you seen someone hammer fist the back of someone's head? Over 15 times in a boxing match. I mean, to me, that's game changing. To me, that's game changing.
Doing illegal shots.
He also stuffed two takedowns. So yeah. But yeah, it just. I guess I get it. I guess if you're an MMA fan, you wanted to see McGregor win because it gives you something to hold over boxing fans. Because boxing fans come across as like the elitist of this combat sports, right? Like if you're a boxing fan,
from.
you're the boxing fan. Like you said, fine wine. The boxing fan, you know, I basically after the fight, I took a lot of shit for no reason, just because I wanted McGregor to win. So of course I get shit for that, and I basically was just like, when did boxing fans all become vegans? Like, when did that happen? Like, when did all boxing fans start doing CrossFit and vaping? Because that's how they're acting. You know, they're acting like they're all vaping.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing too. Like, I got mad at both sides. It's like, you know, it's like I'm half white, half black. I always get stuck in the middle. You know, I do MMA and boxing. I get stuck in the middle, and then just the same idiots that, you know, on the MMA side, I got to deal on the boxing side too, and be like, hey, like you need to shut up too, because you've never fought an MMA fighter either.
Yeah.
You know, so I feel like I have the best palate to speak on both sides, the best point of view to say, hey, you know, because I spar with pro boxers and pro MMA fighters on a daily basis throughout my entire both training camps. So, I mean, but you know, the boxing fans, like you said, they're kind of, like you said, they got their nose stuck up in the air. You know, they think they're better than the MMA fighters because their hands are good and this and that. And you know, it's whatever. And then like, you know, of course, the next thing was that, he wouldn't last in the octagon, you know, Mayweather. And which is true. That's true, of course.
It's also besides the point.
That's besides the point because, you know, Conor called out Floyd, whatever, you know. That's, you know, and
that's
Floyd didn't call out Conor. But at the same time, you know, saying if he jumped in the octagon, that's not a good analogy. You know what I mean? Because boxers never go over ground fighting. But MMA fighters do go over boxing. So the better analogy would be, hey, why don't you fight McGregor in a kickboxing match? Elbows, knees, kicks, right there.
There you go.
So I like that. A better analogy for the scenario.
In which McGregor would more than likely kick the head off of Floyd Mayweather, I'm sure. But it would at least be a lot closer.
Exactly.
I mean, that would be at least be a lot closer of an event. Right, if you didn't have the threat of takedowns. Because how easy would it be to just pick him up, take him down, and choke him out? I mean...
it'd be unstoppable. Yeah. It'd be unstoppable. He wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, too, and this is a lot to say on it, I mean, one of my issues with boxing is that it when I was watching it just felt like it was weird. It didn't feel like fighting. It felt like something different. And I guess that's not what I expected. You know, it didn't feel like fighting. Like when you watch MMA and someone sinks that choke in, right?
Yeah.
Or someone starts getting ground and pounded, right? You have this moment of realization where you go, if there was not a ref there, that person would die. Mm-hmm. That person would literally lose their life. Right? Because the rules allow them to go on top of them and ground and pound. The rules allow them to choke the life out of them. Right? And it's the ref's job to basically keep them from crossing over into the shadow realm. Right?
Yeah.
In boxing, it's such a unique thing that you're watching because, the ref is there, but there are these inlaid rules that keep you from doing ground and pound, that keep you from doing knees and elbows and chokes and stuff. It's just the punching. So it's almost like the stakes are lower. Like, of course, you see people get KO'd, but it's almost like the stakes are lower. And maybe that's what just doesn't do it for me. And again, I'm just making, none of this matters. But this is, I think, why I don't like it. I like when I watch MMA, the stakes are just so much higher. You know, you're watching this thing and you're like again, like in your last fight against Godbeer, right? You literally could have killed that person. Literally. You couldn't do that in a boxing match, really. I know that people die in boxing, but I'm saying, like, literally, it's just that the stakes are so much higher, and I guess that's what I like.
And there's so many different ways to win.
And there's so many different ways to do it.
Thing. Yeah, I definitely get where you're coming from.
All right, I have a question for you, and I this is something we haven't covered, of all things. I just thought of it. Obviously, a lot of MMA fighters, you say, right, they train boxing. Not all of them do, but most of everybody trains boxing. More so than, like I said, some people just train striking, which I wouldn't consider that boxing. Like, training boxing is a different thing.
Well, that's what I told people, too. I was like, McGregor, he's a great striker, terrible boxer.
Sure.
Two totally different things.
And had he been, but to be fair, had he been training boxing for the last 15 years, I'm sure he'd be really good.
Of course.
But he hasn't been doing that. He's been training MMA, and MMA striking is very different.
For sure.
Now, there could be some boxing crossover, but my question is, is there one lesson that you think everybody should take? Like, you've been a professional boxer. I guess technically you still are. I mean, you're in the MMA sphere, but you still consider yourself a pro boxer. So,
because all these MMA fighters now, they want to go out and get boxing license. But just remember, El Blanco did that shit first.
Exactly. Listen, you are the true hipster, my friend. You were there first. So what is one lesson that you would like other MMA fighters to take away from boxing? Do you know what I'm asking? What is the one thing that you think boxing brings over to the UFC? Because here's the thing that got lost in that whole quote disruptions argument, right? About the disruptions coming from that Conor is going to bring into boxing. It's actually the exact opposite. Boxing has disrupted MMA. Boxing has made MMA better. MMA fighters pull from boxing, the sport that's been around for hundreds of years. It's the exact opposite. The UFC isn't bringing anything into boxing. It's the opposite. So, what lesson do you think the MMA fighters who don't train boxing that you wish that they could take with them into fights?
I mean, pretty much, I guess the biggest lesson is that you need it, Everybody, they want to have the movement coaches. They want to throw the spinning back kicks, and stuff like that, and have all these angles. But really the king of angles and where it all started was boxing. The only difference is, you have the range is a little bit different because you can apply kicks. But I think people lose the technique of boxing. I mean, just look. I mean, people don't even try to punch correctly anymore. Their hands are down by their waist and stuff. If they throw the left hook, the right hand's down by their pectoral muscle. Like, there's technique in how to throw punches correctly, turning, pivoting, turning, using your full body weight. Because the power of your punch starts from the ground. It starts at your feet, travels up through your leg, up through your back, rotates through your back, through your shoulder, and out your wrist. But MMA doesn't teach that. And just to really start focusing on boxing, I think a lot more people focus on other things like the leg kicks and stuff like that, which I'm not saying you don't need it, but you're kind of losing the aspect of the actual striking with the hands. I feel like the best kickboxers, because I watch a lot of K1, and the better K1 fighters are the people who have the best striking with their hands, because they're, one, able to set up the kicks better, and then also number two is just it gives people more to worry about, So that's probably the one lesson they need to learn, that you do need a boxing coach. You do need somebody standing over there saying, hey, pick up that right hand, pick up that left hand, and really clean up the striking. That's what it's going to come down to.
Yeah. And then in MMA, I mean, having the boxing and then coupled with the ground skills, which I think which is what makes you such an interesting fighter, which is what's drawn me to you, for the last, I don't know, year and a half or so. I mean, I got to give credit where credit's due. Speaking of Blake, we had a show where we were, the question involved, I can't remember what the exact question was, but it was something like, give a fighter who people aren't really talking about, but everyone needs to know. And I picked Gavin Tucker. Well, that didn't work out. He just got absolutely murdered in his last fight against Rickland. But Blake picked Justin Ledet.
So really?
You were his.
Give him a shout out for that.
Yeah, man, you were his pick. Now I kind of knew that going into it, so that's why I didn't take you. But I really did see a lot in Gavin Tucker. So hopefully he can bounce back from that. I don't know if you watched. Did you watch the Gavin Tucker Rickland fight?
Nah, man, I really don't watch much fighting, actually. It's
well, let me just tell you, 2 10-7s in the third round on judges' scorecards. 2 10-7s.
How does that even happen?
Yeah, that's a good question.
MMA judging.
Yeah, how does that? That was not understanding ref work. Literally, the man was being. There's no other way to describe it without using horrible expletives of what was.
Hold on, is that the guy where the ref should have stopped the fight and he didn't, and he let it?
I mean, it was like, what are we watching?
Yes, it's funny you say that because I was, like I told you before you had called, I was down signing some paperwork with the UFC, and the UFC guy had just told me about that fight. He's like, yeah, man, that ref needs to be fired.
Oh, my Lord.
Crazy.
Listen, there should never, and this is a weird place to use a platform to make an argument, but there should never be a 10-7 in the UFC. If something is a 10-7, it means the fight should have been stopped.
Well, I'm thinking the only time I thought a 10-7 was in play was in that Gray Maynard and when he fought, what's his name? He fights at 140. Frankie Edgar.
Yeah.
When he dropped him, he drops him 3 times in a round. Okay, that's a 10-7 round.
Right.
But now in MMA, it's like they don't even count when you get dropped. Like, you can drop opponent, but it doesn't matter. As long as they get a takedown, it's a 10-8 round because he got the takedown. And it's like, so are we counting when people get dropped, or are we not counting that? Like, I'm not sure how that
boxing,
works,
well, it's because in boxing, a knockdown is like the end-all, be-all. You get a knockdown, you automatically win the round, correct?
Yeah, because, I mean, even if that person who comes back and he wins that round, like, say, okay, he gets knocked out, but he dominates the rest of the round, the best he can get is a 9-8 round.
Yeah.
So regardless, he's still going to, lose that round unless he comes back and drops that guy like a Castillo, freaking, I forgot the other. But like unless it's like just a crazy fight. But yeah, there's no way to really come back from that.
Well, and obviously on that same card, you had the Amanda Nunes-Shevchenko fight, which, again, I know you said you hadn't watched it, but what was interesting about that fight is it brought up this debate about, do judges understand counter-striking?
No, they don't.
And they don't. And I agree. Now, my problem is that fight I thought was kind of a bad example because, part of it is judges don't understand counter-striking. The other part of it is that counter-striking with your back against the fence without any offense may also not be the most, may not be the best tactic to winning an MMA fight. So it kind of goes both ways. You can't just counter-strike with your back against the fence because, you know what I think? This is what I think judges do. And maybe you'll agree with me. I don't know. This is what I think judges do. I think, and I'm not saying they're supposed to do this, but I think this is what they do. When they're watching a fight, whoever they feel like is imposing their game plan, that is who they're giving close rounds to. Right? You're watching 2 fighters, and they're going, okay, this guy seems to be imposing their game plan. And this person seems to be on their heels. So even if the person on their heels is counter-striking, they're going to say that the other person is going to win the round.
But, okay, honestly, I would have no problem with that.
And I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm just saying that's what's happening. Like, that's what these judges are doing.
I would have no problem with that, but it's not holding true across the board.
Sure.
Okay, you take that fight, but, okay, if you take Nick Diaz versus Carlos Condit, when Carlos Condit, literally, his back is to Nick Diaz, and he's running away. And Nick Diaz is applying pressure the whole time. Somehow he loses that fight.
So
it's like, I don't care how they judge the fight. Just keep it 100 across the board. Judge every fight the same, Just like with the Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor, too. Same kind of thing. You got the 4th and 5th round, and McGregor's literally running. Like people are, like in my fight against Chase Sherman, they're talking about, oh, you're a runaway fighter. Motherfuckers, I never took my eyes off of Chase Sherman. I never turned my back, literally, and ran away like Conor McGregor. Like, are y'all serious? But y'all think he won the fight? I understand he dropped him, but obviously MMA don't count when you drop people. So, I mean, let's create a system and we just keep it the same the whole entire time.
Yeah, what I would like to see really is. I
fighters become judges?
Well, that, first of all, because I really think that would make a huge difference. The other thing is, it is 2017. The fact that a judge at the end of a wooden table, okay, is seeing a different fight than another judge who's at the other side of a wooden table, right? They have no access to special angles. They have no access to anything. They are just watching this fight through the cage, and one guy on one side of on the table is going to see a different fight than the other guy. That doesn't make any sense. We have surpassed that. We have surpassed that at this point. The 3 judges should be in isolation booths watching a closed caption version of the fight. I'm not saying they have access to striking totals, nothing like that. But they should be able to watch from the exact same camera angle and watch the fight exactly the same. Because I remember I had a judge on my show, and him and I talked for like 2 hours. And because he was saying, basically like, yeah, you can't, like, don't get mad at these judges, and trying to explain the job and this and that, which I understood all that. But it doesn't make sense. How can one person say that something was a 10-9 and someone else say something was a 9-10? How? I mean, just seriously think about that, and think about how crazy that actually is. That two people saw the same exact thing and literally are taking two different things away from it. If there's one unified scoring system, how are both people seeing two different things? Then conversely, you have fights like the Joe Lozon Marcin Held fight, or the Marion Renault Ashley Evans Smith fight, where, listen, I understand close fights. I understand people getting the nod. Okay, that happened with Shevchenko Nunes, right? Nunes got the nod. And I understand my people were like, "Oh, it's not a robbery though. There are robberies in the UFC. That's not a robbery. It's just a close fight." And I understand those things. But like what happened with Marcin Held and Joe Lozon is one of the most egregious. Joe Lozon won that fight. The first thing that Joe Lozon said when he got the microphone was, "I did not win that fight. I don't know why I'm standing here." Fight. And it made no sense. Marcin Held clearly won the fight. So my thing is like, why? Why is that happening? There's something wrong. And I think this is how you fix it. You have some type of closed caption system where these judges are all watching the exact same fight, and that way, and then they're all, they're like isolated from everything else, and that way they can see all the angles.
Did when you were talking to this judge or whatever, what kind of training do they go through?
Yeah, so first of all, every state is different, which is one of the biggest problems. And he talked pretty openly about that, was that, he could be a judge in like 30 different states. And for many of them, there is literally no requirements other than getting a license. And getting a license is an application.
That's probably the biggest problem
That's the biggest problem
no
right there.
Training. Yeah.
And it just depends on the state, right? Some states, they're really rigid. But it's kind of similar with being a referee. Not all states require the same stuff. And it's, there needs to be some type of, and this isn't like a pro-government, anti-government argument, but it's like on some level there needs to be some type of federal oversight so that way you can have everything unified. Yeah. I mean, the fact that, are we still, different states are on different rules about whether your knee's down? I mean, I'm pretty sure that's still a thing. In some states, one knee being down is you can kick them in the face, and then in other states you can't. You know?
I mean, it goes even deeper than that. I mean, each state you go to, they have different ways that you can tape the hand. Like, because my trainer, he likes to tape my hand a certain way because that's the way we did it in boxing. It's called bridging. And so a lot of states don't allow it, but some states do. You know what I'm saying? But when it comes to boxing, they allow it. Or even like when I was in Ireland and I fought on the same I was in the locker room with Artem Lebov. Yeah. Funniest thing ever, I thought. And he wanted to fight with no tape whatsoever. And then they gave him a big deal about that. And I'm like, what? This man wants to wear no tape. Just let him do it. Like, you're going to get...
What's so funny is that of all people to not want their hands taped, Artem Lobov makes the most sense. What a crazy guy. I love that.
Yeah, and I'm thinking like, what? Like, if I didn't tape my hand, my shit would just break instantly. Once I clenched my fist, it would just shatter. Like, what?
Wow. That's really funny. I like that. Yeah. That's a good piece of information I don't think anybody has. I love that. That's a great. Just because it's if you've seen Artem fight and you've listened to his interviews and stuff, it makes complete sense. Like, that is he would be the guy that's like, nah, don't tip my hand, get away from me, let's just fight.
Oh, he was mad. Oh yeah, he made a big thing about it. He's like, oh man, we already had this discussion, man, I don't have to take my hand. Like, he was talking to commissions like that. He was mad.
I love it.
He was like, you better not put no tape on my hand. I'm like, damn, okay, go ahead. Shit.
Right. All right, well, hey, I kept you on here a lot longer than I said I was going to, so I'll go ahead and get you out of here. Anything else you want to say before you go? The floor is yours.
Oh, yeah, thank you to all my sponsors back in my hometown, Rosharon, Manville, Alvin, all my sponsors, Joseph Hammonds, James Novak, Alvin Apparel, the Caboose Barbecue. Man, there's so many. I'm trying to go down the line. Shit. I need a paper to say
you can start writing these down.
Yeah. Tommaso's, everybody that helped me out with this training camp, man, thank you so much. So much help from the community. My PR rep, I couldn't have done this without her, Alina Pike. Thank you so much, and thank you to everybody, the hometown love, support, everything, man. It's been a blessing.
Justin, man, I legitimately am excited to see you get back in there. It's been far too long, my friend.
Man, for real, dude. Like, man, it was ridiculous, man. Man, the funny thing is, I'm kind of mad because I've been waiting to talk to MMA Junkie, dude. That's the people I want to talk to, man. I got some shit to say to them.
Oh yeah, because aren't they the ones that reported about the
tainted
supplement? Yeah.
But the thing I'm mad about is okay, when I got popped for the tainted supplement, every article that came out, or MMA Junkie article that came out, was like, oh, we know the real reason why he was pulled from his fight, blah, 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 he's guilty. Now, John Jones or Junior Dos Santos, gets popped, and it's like, oh, give him the benefit of the doubt, guys. Like, bitch, where was that at when you wrote your article on me? Like, okay, I got you.
Yeah, you haven't got a chance. Are they not at this event? They're definitely there. You got to hunt them down.
Well, they're not. I mean, it's not on my media requirements.
Okay.
So they probably know that I'm gunning after them. So they're like, we're going to chill on Justin right now. Give him some time to cool off. So
right. If they're like, let him get a win, and then that way maybe he'll be happier, and then we'll chat with him.
Yeah.
Well, I got some friends over there at Junkie, so I'll give him a chat. I'll give him a talking to.
Yeah, let them know. Let them know, man.
Well, I work with MMA Today, and they'll always give you a fair shake. So they're wonderful. All right, man. I'll get you out of here. Do you want to make a prediction on Luke Rockhold, David Branch?
I'll be at the bar. That's my prediction.
I'm gonna go David Branch. I'm gonna go against conventional wisdom. And pick David Branch, so we'll see.
Is this Luke Rockhold's first fight since he got knocked out by Bisping?
Yeah, man. It's been a hot minute.
Ooh,
yeah,
okay.
It's been a hot minute.
That might be pretty interesting then. Because I know he had a big thing about his money and stuff after he lost the belt and his money went way lower and then he didn't want to fight no more.
I personally, and I probably shouldn't be putting this on your interview. If you want me to take it off, I will at the very end, because I don't know what your relationship is, but or if you have one. I think Rockhold is a bully, and I think like most bullies, when they finally get put in their place, they collapse in on themselves like they supernova. They just collapse in on themselves and die, and I think that's what you saw after the Bisping loss. I think he's a bully that's used to bullying people, and he's kind of cowardly, and he always has been, and he's always been really injury prone. And I think that he lost that fight. I think he's never going to recover. And if you lose to a guy like David Branch, which I think is going to happen, if you lose to a guy like David Branch, boy, that's going to be tough to come back from. Especially when you're rated as high or ranked as high as Rockhold is. That's going to be really difficult to come back from. So we'll see. David Branch has a tendency to make fights really ugly, so maybe you won't be able to hold that against him too much. But yeah, I mean, I think if he loses to David Branch, I literally think every part of his ego will just disappear, and he will retire. So yeah. If Rockhold loses to David Branch and then retires, I want something. Somebody has to give me something, because I'm calling it right now. There you go. So that's my prediction. I'll go really far with it just to see if I'm right.
Hey, I think a lot of fighters are like that, though. It's crazy to me about their egos.
Can't handle
like
losses.
That, and the mentality.
Well, and I know obviously you're not the biggest fan of Conor McGregor, but that's what I like about Conor, though, is he does know how to lose, and he can handle it. He can handle it. He can move on, and he can keep pressing forward, and I think, I think he'll bounce back from this Floyd thing perfectly fine. I don't really foresee him losing in the UFC anytime soon. So we will see. I think his toughest matchup would be Diaz a third time, honestly. And I really think
that's
just for how he is, for his style and what he needs to happen in a fight in order for him to win. Nate Diaz is his kryptonite. That type of fighter is his kryptonite. And
what? I feel like Nate Diaz is the safest fight for him.
No,
if you notice,
I disagree.
He be picking safe fights.
I hard disagree. I think the easiest fight for him is Khabib.
Nah, that's definitely not the easiest fight. I
think that's the easiest fight for him, man. I do. I 100% think so. I think Khabib goes in. I think Khabib doesn't make it much longer than 90 seconds. I think he goes in for one of his awkward takedowns and he gets clipped. And you get clipped the same way that Michael Johnson clipped Khabib. Michael Johnson doesn't have the power that Conor has or the precision.
Yeah.
So when Michael Johnson landed that shot that dropped Khabib, that same shot, you're going night-night with Conor. And that's not the first time that Khabib has been clipped going in, because that's the only thing he can do.
Yeah.
And that's it.
He's so boring.
You can see it from a mile away. So when you have guys like Conor who's able to use his range as effectively as he's able to use it, to use counter striking in a way that in MMA is in the upper echelons of counter striking, right?
Actually, I'm gonna go out on a limb. I think he's the best.
Yeah, I agree. I think I would agree. It didn't translate over into boxing, obviously, but for MMA purposes, I mean, he has some of the best counter striking, if not the best. I would say Joanna is probably up there too. You know, as far as pure MMA striking is concerned, I mean, she is just incredible.
For sure.
But anyway, yeah, I think that's the easiest fight. I think the second hardest fight is probably Tony Ferguson, because again, Tony Ferguson is just a really gritty guy who can take shots. Although, again, if Lando Veneta can drop you, Conor McGregor can sure as hell drop you.
That's my only thing about Tony. Like, yeah, he's good. He hits hard, but man, he leaves himself open a lot. He gets dropped a lot.
Yeah, he does. But again, Nate Diaz, that style, man, a guy who, as and this is Conor's words, not mine, the Mexican punching bag. You know, like that type of guy is going to give a guy like Conor trouble, because he can withstand the damage. Anyone that's again, take Floyd for instance. Floyd understood this. Hey, if I could withstand the damage, that's it. Conor has nothing to give me. But in the UFC, there's only a handful of dudes that are going to be able to handle that. Nate's one of them. Tony could be, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah,
I know for an absolute fact Khabib is not one of them. There's no way in hell. Khabib takes two of those shots, he's dead.
The thing with Diaz is he's just the lightest puncher in the division. So automatically, I feel like that's the safest fight. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, Conor's proven that he has a chin. What he hasn't proven is obviously the gas tank, but I don't think it's possible for him to fix it. I don't think that there's anything that he could do to change that. I think it is what it is. You know, that is his style of winning fights is predicated on gassing himself out.
Yeah, because he explodes. You can't explode forever.
No, you know, and if he doesn't, again, watching your fight with Chase Sherman, to go full circle with it, you know, that's the reason why you were, again, for our listeners, you were my first interview. And the reason why you were my first interview is because I had just watched that fight. It was not that long after. It was leading up to your fight in Ireland. And, you know, I was so incredibly impressed with the output, because that output at any division is a lot and insane and crazy to see, especially the amount of headshots versus everything else, right? Like, I don't even know what it was. It was like a 93% headshot ratio. It's just insane. Well, I mean, you just pieced them apart. But then you go, oh, this is at heavyweight. I mean, holy shit. You know, you didn't knock him out, which I guess people were complaining about that, but it's like, guys, what more do you want to see? I mean, that could have been, you could have had 10-8 rounds in there. I mean, how dominant that was. You know, you might have had a 10-8. I don't remember, but it was incredibly dominant. So, and that's something that Conor will not be able to do. The type of fighting or his style does not lend itself to being able to do it for 25 minutes. I mean, it just doesn't. It's incredible that he was able to do what he did in the fourth round in that Diaz fight, honestly. What he was able to do in that fourth round was nothing short of amazing. You know, to be able to come back like that. And then the fifth round, he was dead. I mean, he might as well come out with X's over his eyes. I mean, he was just, that was it. He had, fourth round, used up whatever second win he got. So, yeah. So there's that. We went on long. No one's listening at this point. They heard you start to thank your sponsors and like, all right, I'm getting the hell out of here. so there you go. But all right, man, I'll talk to you soon.
All right, man. Thanks for the call, dude.
All right, bye.